Bonjour à tous! Welcome back to Petite Spatule. If it's your first time here, bienvenue to you as well. I'm Jocelyn and I'm a huge pastry lover and I do pastry reviews every Wednesday. Before I left Paris a month ago, I still had a long list of pastries I wanted to get my hands on. Honestly, in Paris, you will never run out of pastries to try. There's just a variety of pastries all the time, from classic traditional pastries to a more creative type of pastry. And then the flavor profile has a range as well, from typical flavors to more innovative flavors. So during the last 2 weeks on my stay in Paris, I really juggled my time between work and the 6 p.m. pandemic curfew that is set in place to squeeze in some trips to patisseries to kind of sort of have my last pastries of Paris. First up, I'm taking you to one of my favorite streets here in Paris called Rue Montorgueil. I find this cobblestone street extremely charming. It's lined with different cafes, restaurants, and different artisanal food shops. Very ideal for a nice Parisian stroll. And it is also here where you can actually find the oldest pastry shop in Paris called Stohrer. It was founded by Nicolas Stohrer way back in 1730. And he happens to be the pastry chef of King Louis XV. According to their website, Nicolas Stohrer invented the classic rum baba. So a rum baba is basically a yeast cake that is then soaked in rum syrup. They sell 3 versions of the baba. There's the rum baba, Chantilly Baba, and Ali Baba, which apparently is the first version of rum baba. And up to this day, Stohrer makes it the same way as it was made and served centuries ago. So baba soaked in rum, then topped with pastry cream and raisins, although back then it was also served with fresh grapes. But how amazing is that you are basically eating the same pastry as King Louis XV. The Chantilly Baba was created in the 19th century when Chantilly cream was quite on trend, and Stohrer replaced the pastry cream to Chantilly cream to make the Baba lighter. So when I was there, I decided to pick out the Chantilly Baba. It looked very enticing in the pastry case. To be honest, I have had rum baba before and didn't understand why people could like this cake. However, I realized that I probably tried a version that didn't do justice to this gem. The rum baba of Stohrer is definitely worth a try. The baba itself was not too yeasty, so I didn't feel like I was eating bread, and it wasn't too sweet as well. The baba was able to absorb a great amount of rum syrup as well. The rum syrup itself had a nice kick of rum, definitely a good dosage. The Chantilly cream definitely gave the light balance to this cake. The texture of this cake was really pleasant to the mouthfeel. It had a fluffy texture and you get the rum syrup trickling out in a nice flow. Then you get the cloud-like Chantilly cream, which kind of tied everything together. It was a super delicious cake and I honestly wish that I had gotten more. From a classic, let us move on to a more innovative pastry. It's the Tart Sesame Noir Yuzu, or the Black Sesame Tart from the Jardin Sucré. The yuzu mousse had a light texture and had just enough yuzu flavor in the sense that you could still taste the cream used for the mousse. The base of this tart is a pâte sucrée, or a sweet pastry base with added charcoal. The addition of the edible charcoal really didn't give much of a flavor. I think the use of charcoal was more for its aesthetic, and it also left a pleasant granular-like texture in your palate. The pâte sucrée itself, well, since it is a sweet pastry, is on the sweeter side when eaten alone. In the end, it balanced out with the salty elements in this tart. The sesame praline insert is, of course, the heart of this tart. It was so delicious. Personally, since I grew up with black sesame flavor in desserts, this sesame praline just brought back nostalgic memories of family gatherings. It has a nice play on sweet and savory and is the element of the dish that tied all the other elements together. The black sesame ganache had a nice, smooth texture. I think they used white chocolate for the ganache since there was that sweetness level you would usually get from a white chocolate. Then the black sesame flavor added to the ganache definitely toned down the sweetness to make a good balance. Again, another play on sweet and salty. When all elements are eaten together, you experience a symphony of flavor and texture. The dominant flavor was definitely the black sesame, and the yuzu was of perfect dosage to cut through the richness of black sesame flavor. Texture-wise, you have a light and airy mousse, creamy ganache, crispy crust, flowy praline with pleasant fruity texture. Then you get the after mini crunch from the black sesame and charcoal. It's just beautiful. Definitely another great tart from Le Jardin Sucré. Another dessert I tried was the waffles from Ladurée, and it's definitely not your ordinary waffles. It's an entremet with 5 different elements. It had a crispy gianduja hazelnut base that was packed full of texture from the tiny caramel brittles, and the gianduja melts in your mouth as you eat it. Then there was a layer of hazelnut dacquoise with a great hazelnut flavor. It gave a nice, almost chewy texture like what you would get from the inside of a good macaron. Then the hazelnut praline cream layer had a very intense hazelnut flavor as well. There was still some tiny morsels of hazelnuts in it, which I really liked. Then there was also a layer of soft hazelnut caramel. The caramel flavor was very light and the hint of salt was very subtle. Personally, I would have preferred it to be saltier because I really like the play of sweet and salty on desserts. There was definitely a taste of hazelnut in the caramel and the texture was creamy. Finally, there was the whipped panna cotta, which tasted really good. You can really taste the cream used in this element. It had a mousse-like texture and it was silky and milky as it melted in your mouth, almost the same smooth feeling when eating a panna cotta. When eaten as a whole, all the elements just married so well together. Each of the components had its role in both texture and flavor. The dominant flavor is obviously hazelnut since this is a hazelnut waffle, and this flavor is mostly coming from the hazelnut praline cream layer. All in all, I really enjoyed this waffle. This waffle has a big portion size, so I would say it's good for sharing between 2 people. Although I had to say that I actually had to stop myself from finishing the entire waffle in just one sitting. Next pastry that I tried was the pomme tatin au sirop d'érable, or the maple syrup apple tatin of des Gâteaux et du pain. If you've seen my video of the brown sugar tart before, you would remember that I mentioned this tart as being one of my favorite tarts to date. So before leaving Paris, I had to have it again, of course. This tart had a sweet pastry base, and as expected, it was very delicious and had a nutty flavor, and it was ultra crispy. I have to say, for me, des Gâteaux et du pain makes the best tart shells. This tart had a layer of maple syrup cream, which was ultra creamy, and the maple syrup flavor was just delicious. And in between the cream was a layer of biscuit, which added to the texture of the entire tart, although it didn't really contribute much in terms of flavor. There were also pieces of pecan nuts at the bottom of the tart. This tart was then topped with a disc of organic caramelized apples, Tatin style. The apples were cooked perfectly. It had a nice and tender texture and great caramelized apple flavors as well. I really like this tart. As I said earlier, it's one of my favorite pastries here in Paris, and I highly recommend for you to try it. Although it is important to note, though, that this tart is not available all year round. I once went to get it in the month of May, but the sales associate at that time said that they only make this tart when apples are in season. Last pastry I tried was Pierre Hermé's Infiniment Vanille, or his famous vanilla tart. I have actually tried this tart already before and remembered being blown away by it. So I picked up this tart for the sake of reliving a memory. It had a pâte sablé or a short crust base, and it was nice and crispy. It was not sweet as well, which was great to balance the rest of the elements from this tart. Then there was a layer of biscuit soaked in vanilla juice. The biscuit itself was on the drier side, which meant that it was able to absorb a great amount of vanilla juice. When you bite into it, the vanilla juice would ooze out in your mouth. It gave a great sensation in my palate, and of course, the flavor was super vanilla. Then there was a layer of white chocolate vanilla ganache. It was very smooth and creamy ganache with some textural bites from the vanilla seeds. You could taste the sweetness from the white chocolate. Lastly, the top layer is a vanilla mascarpone cream. It had a mousse-like texture and had a good intensity of vanilla, and it also had the pleasantly grainy texture from the vanilla seeds. This tart actually uses 3 types of vanilla. Vanillas from Mexico, Tahiti, and Madagascar. It was as good as I remembered, and definitely for all vanilla lovers. Honestly, there were more pastries I wanted to try before leaving Paris. However, time wasn't really on my side, so I just tried to get what I could. And in the end, I was super happy with the 5 pastries that I picked up. All of them were so delicious. And as I'm filming this, I am actually now craving for that rum baba from Stohrer. How about you? Were there any pastry in the 5 that I've shared that you would like to taste right now? Let me know in the comment section below. I am looking forward to reading them. Thank you for watching my pastry reviews during my mini Parisian experience. I really enjoyed filming, sharing, and tasting the pastries of Paris with you. For my upcoming videos, they will probably be still pastry related. However, if there are some contents that you would want me to film or do, go ahead and share them in the comment section below. At the end of the day, I would want to film videos that you guys would enjoy watching. Anyway, I will see you next week for another one. À la prochaine. Till the next one.